Satan, Sunday saint, fooling your neighbor, that's what you think. Reading the good book, singing the hymns. Come Monday morning and it's back to a life of sin.
Good evening and thanks for staying up late with us. Developing tonight, a man is behind bars in Seguin after telling police he was going to a church to fulfill a prophecy. Eyewitness News reporter Vanessa Croy spoke with the person who reported the man to police, saying he came into her restaurant and when he left, she noticed he had a gun in his hand.
The owner of this restaurant came by early Sunday morning looking for the nearest Baptist church. He even asked her daughter for a ride. But when he turned to leave, that's when they saw he had a gun and called police.
What if she said the wrong thing? What if we reacted the wrong way?
It was a terrifying moment early Sunday morning when Las Maranitas opened for business.
There was a guy that came in and went to the restroom. He was wearing those surgical masks and sunglasses, and that's when they kind of, why is he wearing that?
Owner Gabriela Jimenez said the man was in the bathroom for around 20 minutes when he came out asking where he could find the Baptist church, even asking her daughter to take him there.
He said no, that he was looking for one that had a fountain in it or something like that.
When he turned to leave, that's when they noticed the gun.
He didn't point it at anybody, but he had the gun in his hand, like he had a good grip on it.
Jimenez called 911, then Seguin police later arrested 33-year-old Tony Dwayne Albert II. Police say Albert was walking near the Guadalupe River Bridge wearing a white scarf on his head, tactical gear, and a surgical mask. And he had a loaded handgun with extra ammunition.
He said he was en route to a church, which he did not identify the church, to fulfill a prophecy.
Albert was arrested and charged with marijuana possession and for having a firearm. Seguin police say they are working with the Texas Rangers, FBI, and ATF to learn more about Albert's plan and motive.
To make sure that there's not a threat on another community or on Seguin.
And authorities are saying they're grateful to Jimenez, who notified police.
We'd rather go out and it be nothing than something that we didn't check because somebody didn't want to bother us, and we don't go out and check it and it ends up being something such as this. It could have turned into something that was devastating to our community.
Jimenez is just glad her family and employees are safe.
It's like, you don't really think about anything that's going around. It's like, you just want to protect everybody that's here, calm down, and
Albert is being held on a $100,000 bond, and police said it's important to note that he did not specifically identify a church here in Seguin. In fact, he told police he thought he was in a different city altogether. Right now, police aren't releasing any more details, they said, until they finish the investigation. For now, in Seguin, Vanessa Croy, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.
According to the Huffington Post, no one has claimed the $1.537 billion Mega Millions jackpot from October. The sole winning ticket was sold at a grocery store in Simpsonville, South Carolina, but as of Friday, no one had come forward to claim the prize. The mystery almost billionaire has 180 days from the drawing date to claim the pot. If it goes unclaimed, the money will be returned to each of the 44 states that participate in the Mega Millions lottery.
Earlier this month, Joseph Garcia, a member of the Texas 7 prison gang, was executed after being convicted of capital murder under what's called the law of parties. Though the law is used often, it can often be confusing for many people. How can someone be held criminally responsible for a murder when they didn't pull the trigger? Paul Venema now with a closer look at the Texas law of parties.
After breaking out of a South Texas prison in 1999, Joseph Garcia and 6 others were robbing an Irving, Texas sporting goods store when they were surprised by a police officer. That officer was shot and killed by ringleader George Rivas. But because Garcia should have anticipated that the murder could have occurred, he was tried, convicted, and executed under the law of parties. It says that, hang on for some legalese, All conspirators are guilty of the felony actually committed, though having no intent to commit it if the offense was committed in furtherance of the unlawful purpose and one that should have been anticipated. Defense attorney Mark Stevens, who was not involved in the Garcia case, isn't comfortable with the law when it applies to death penalty cases.
It goes too far. It's one thing to put somebody in prison as a party, to put them in prison for life, but to execute them, to get the ultimate punishment, that does bother people.
District Attorney Nicholas Nico LaHood isn't among those people.
I just think it's a good law.
And he agreed with its application in the Garcia case.
There was foreseeability, there was furtherance of the crime by all of them. They knew there was a weapon that could take someone's life, so that was the foreseeability issue of it.
LaHood gave me an example of where the law of parties doesn't apply. His analogy, I asked him for a ride to a convenience store.
You go down there, you run in, I have no idea you have a gun, you do an armed robbery, you shoot somebody, you get in the car, drive, what's going on? And then I drive off. Well, that's not the law of parties. I didn't know.
Though Stevens agrees with the law,
I think it's good law in general.
He'd like the legislature to amend it when it's a death penalty case, but he's not optimistic.
Legislators are famously afraid of appearing soft on crime.
Paul Venema, KSAT 12 News.
Nobody can do it like me. Nobody. Nobody can do it like me. Honestly.
Nobody's stronger than me.
Nobody has better toys than I do.
There's nobody bigger or better at the military than I am.
Nobody loves the Bible more than I do.
Nobody builds walls better than me.
Nobody's better to people with disabilities than me. Nobody's fighting for the veterans like I'm fighting for the veterans.
There's nobody that's done so much for equality as I have.
There's nobody more pro-Israel than I am. There's nobody more conservative than me.
There is nobody that respects women more than I do. Nobody would be tougher on ISIS than Donald Trump.
Because nobody's ever had crowds like Trump has had.
There's nobody that understands the horror of nuclear better than me. And nobody even understands it but me. It's called devaluation. The sale of the uranium that nobody knows what it means. I know what it means.
Nobody knows more about trade than me.
Nobody knows the game better than I do.
Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me.
Nobody knows politicians better than I do.
Nobody knows more about taxes than I do. Nobody knows more about debt than I do.
Nobody knows the system better than me, which is why I alone can fix it.
In Acts 17, the Apostle Paul stood at the Areopagus where he preached, "Men of Athens, I perceive that you are very religious. For as I passed along the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God. What you worship as unknown, I proclaim to you as known. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of men to live on the earth, having determined their time and boundaries, that they should seek God and find him. Yet he's not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. And as your own poets have said, we are indeed his offspring. Being God's offspring, we ought not to think he's an image formed by the art and imagination of man. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed, and has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. We print "In God We Trust" on our money, say "One Nation Under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance, and sing "God Bless America" at our sporting events. But do not assume this is the triune God of the Bible. These are America's altars to an unknown God. The judgment of God is coming upon every nation. We must preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, the only word that will save their souls, when we understand the text.
According to state media, schools in southern China are forcing school children to wear uniforms with tracking chips that trigger an alarm if they skip class or, goodness, fall asleep. On top of that, facial recognition scanners can match the chips with the correct students if they try to swap jackets. The company that makes the chips says it's part of the Chinese Communist Party effort to create smart campuses across the country. Now, the news has sparked debate in China and across the globe. So now we turn to legal and media analyst Lionel. Lionel, welcome aboard, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Uniforms with microchips in the arms on each side of the jacket to track the students' every move. And get this, you can wash the jacket up to 500 times in temperatures of up to 150 degrees Celsius and no problem. How bizarre and frightening is this?
I got to tell you something right now. Let me first of all commend you. In your introduction, you literally described every aspect of this story, so much so that there is nothing left for me to say. I'm kidding, of course, because you are comprehensive. But let's go through this. Steve, I think you're missing the point. You see, Steve, the two sensors are going to be in the shoulders, and they're talking about durable up to 300 degrees. Now, what happens is they even imagine this can track you if you fall asleep, if you are a truant. And remember, they're called smart. So it's got to be good. And truancy numbers are dropping. This is the 5th 5-year period, or the 13th 5-year plan for China. And they want to outdo Western technology by 2025. So imagine you've got this jacket on that you can't take off. You can't switch it with somebody else who's has a better attendance rate than you, because they'll know this. It even monitors what you're buying. But it's smart. And it also, people are going to say, well, it's a good idea because it will limit abductions and kidnapping, and what's wrong with letting people know where you are? And after all, they're just kids. And Steve, this is happening here. I don't want to get biblical, but you know, I've heard about this mark of the beast business my whole life. I think it's true. I think biblical prophecy. The more I'm hearing about this, everything we do. Steve, right now, in your wallet, you have RFID chips, your driver's license, your license tag, your passport, everywhere. Do you have a door key? Do you have some kind of a keyless entry? You are on a 24/7 grid. So we can talk about this, but this isn't coming. It's already here.
Right, and in China, this is the tip of the proverbial iceberg, because their plan is that by 2021, they're going to have 600 million cameras all over the country. Every citizen, seriously, every citizen will be tracked.
I know this.
And they're going to be given a score. They're going to be given a behavioral score, and if the score is good, if you act good, you get perks like better transit, better transportation, better hospital, a gym membership. If you're bad, you get put on a blacklist and you suffer problems with travel and other issues.
Steve,
I mean, that's as Orwellian as it gets.
This is going on now. In fact, have you ever noticed here in New York City, where I am and you are, do you know that whenever there is any murder anywhere, any suspect, we always have a picture of him. And nobody ever says, wait a minute, are there cameras on every corner? Yes. And let me also tell you something. For those of you who are trying to get your credit scores okay, you know, your FICO and this FICO and Equifax, there are going to be new algorithms, seriously, that are going to base your credit worthiness not so much on your payment history and all of the usual factors, but who your friends are, how long you are online. Do you ever get anything from Apple, which I do, that says, here's your productivity. This is how long you've been either on your phone or wasting your time. Steve, this is not the future. We live in a 24/7 real-time panopticon. We are watched every step of the way. And what scares me even more is not that we're talking about this, but that the newer generations who were born in captivity don't have any appreciation for this thing that you called Orwellian, this dystopian horror story that's been written.
And that's great. Now. That is a great, seriously, all kidding aside, born into captivity or born in captivity, that is a great way to put it. Do you know that in households with kids 5 and under, 40-some-odd% of them have either a smartphone or a tablet, and 1/3 of those households have, you know, Alexa or some voice-activated system, and the kids, a great percentage of the little kids, use them. They know nothing else but that. So that's a great way to put it.
And also, the thing is, what happened is, this is so ubiquitous, there's a new, see, we're being immersed in this. There was a story today in the New York Post, which is rather cute. The number of people who are texting exes and people who are texting in their sleep. And they're also talking about, do you sleep with your, do you sleep with your phone next to you in your bed? This is a radiation output.
Yes.
Look, we are immersed, and what's happening right now is, every single day, people are hearing this to the point that I believe, Steve, they are habituating to the news, and they're not responding to it because it's like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, I know, Big Brother.
Yep.
What are we going to do about it? What am I going to do? What, move to Mars?
Well,
so the question is, yes, sir.
No, I was going to say, all I could say to you is watch what you say and watch where you go and watch what you do and watch who you hang out with. But otherwise, you're fine. Lionel, thank you, my friend.
Here at RT, we believe that by following the tech beat, we give ourselves and you a glimpse into our lives and what it's going to be like in the future. Yesterday, we tackled the issue of pre-selecting what our children would look like, or designing babies, as some call it. Well, today we reveal something that is rather worrisome, especially in light of the move toward wearables and implanted devices inside of our bodies for medical reasons. One example is that of a device applied to the brain of patients with Parkinson's. The problem? Hackers. Thanks so much, Dan. Boy, I'll tell you what, if there's ever a perfect guest to talk about the technology of our times getting a little bit ahead of us, or maybe we're getting ahead of it, it's Lionel, and he's joining us now to share his thoughts with this situation. What do you think, Lionel?
Well, first of all, Rick, what we're doing right now is, there was a comment that was made, this is 20 years off. Mm-hmm. No, it's not. It's here right now. Now, you mentioned before in a conversation about offing somebody, removing somebody, dispatching somebody, expurgating them, ruining them.
That was a Saudi Arabia story.
Right. Let's assume that this particular individual is one out of 200,000 Americans, people here who get, let's say, call this just a pacemaker. And I don't have to go and have some kind of a hit team. Oh. I don't need to use a bone saw and dissolve somebody in acid. And you're done. You're finished. Now, ultimately, think about this.
Yeah.
What makes Rick Sanchez is your memory, your perspective, what you saw. The worst thing that we could ever do is to ablate and remove memory. You know, they say that history would be a wonderful thing if only it were true, which is what Tolstoy said. But if I could go in and I could, instead of taking Rick Sanchez, human being, I look at you as an integrated circuit covered in a carbon shell, and you become basically the ultimate Manchurian candidate. Since the days of MK Ultra, Rick, it has always been the desire to control people, to have, forget robots, forget General Dynamics and all of that, or Boston Dynamics. Imagine I control you, and I can control you with just the twist of a dial and the implantation of an electrode, and it's going to happen right now. Who's watching this? Who is protecting against this, I ask you, sir? Who?
So we should do everything possible to protect ourselves and prevent any of these new technologies, especially the ones that are invasive, correct?
Correct. And we also need to understand something. One thing in particular, you know, a lot of young folks, God bless them, they look at robots and they confuse robotics with artificial intelligence. The two are completely different. If I can go a step further, what if I use you, Rick Sanchez's brain, to park data? Like I would, instead of putting data on a phone, I park it in you. You haven't even begun to see what we're looking at. Not 20 years from now, but right now, my friend.
Well, when I said you were the perfect guest for this segment, guess what? I nailed it. You are. And I'm glad nobody's
Thank you, my friend.
I'm glad nobody's taking your memory away, by the way. Good job, my friend. Thank you. Well done.
In Revelation 12 and 13, the Apostle John described an unholy trinity, an imitation of the triune God, consisting of the dragon or Satan, the first beast who is the Antichrist, and the second beast, the false prophet. The second beast makes all the earth worship the first beast, performing great signs and deceptions, and causes those who wouldn't worship the beast to be slain. Also, it causes all to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast or the number of its name. It is the number of a man, and his number is 666. The most popular theories about the mark of the beast pop up in end times fiction. In the old film A Thief in the Night, the mark is a binary code for 666. In the Left Behind series, it's a computer chip in the back of the hand or the forehead. But is it possible this mark is not something physical, but spiritual? Notice the beast causes all people to be marked, and the mark is on the right hand or the forehead. In Deuteronomy 6, God told Israel, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes." Isaiah 41:13 says, "The Lord God holds our right hand." We are marked by the deeds we do with our hands and the thoughts we think with our mind. Are you doing the works of God or the works of the devil? Are you thinking with the mind of man or with the mind of Christ? This calls for wisdom and something we should consider all the time, though it may also have a future fulfillment when we understand the text.
CNN reports this 7.0 magnitude earthquake was recorded off the coast of the southern Philippines on Saturday morning. The quake struck at 11:39 a.m. in an area southeast of Davao, approximately 62 miles from the city of Pundagitan. The U.S. Pacific Tsunami Warning Center has warned of a tsunami threat for parts of the Pacific that were closer to the earthquake. The coasts of Indonesia, the Philippines, and Palau may see tsunami waves of less than a foot above tide levels. The Philippines Institute of Volcanology and Seismology has advised the residents and tourists to stay away from coastal areas as disturbances are expected until 2 p.m.
A powerful storm slammed the Philippines Saturday, spurring deadly landslides. The landslides killed at least 4 people, including 3 members of a family. Southeast of Manila, the country's central islands have been hit the hardest so far, forcing about 12,000 people to evacuate. The rain is expected to move west over the South China Sea on Sunday. Meanwhile, a 6.9 magnitude undersea earthquake also struck the southern Philippine Islands. Officials are advising people in the area to avoid beaches, but lifted their initial tsunami warning. No casualties or damage have been reported.
Investigators want to know how a lion escaped from an enclosure before killing an intern at a wildlife conservatory in North Carolina. 22-year-old Alexandra Black was helping clean out the big cat's quarters yesterday when she was attacked. Janet Shamlian is outside the Conservators Center in Burlington, about 50 miles northwest of Raleigh. Janet, good morning.
Good morning. This is a horrific incident, and the Animal Refuge Center is now closed until further notice. The question that investigators are trying to answer, how did this lion get out of what handlers say was a secure and locked area? This is Mathai. The lion the Conservators Center in North Carolina says somehow escaped a locked area before attacking Alexandra Black, an intern who'd been there only 10 days. It happened alongside a trained animal keeper during a routine cleaning of the lion's cage.
There were visitors on site, but we used our established safety protocol to ensure a safe and immediate exit from the animal park.
Handlers tried to tranquilize the male lion several times, but eventually were forced to shoot Mathai to remove the young woman's body. She was 22. Alex, as friends called her, recently graduated from Indiana University Bloomington and hopes someday to be a zookeeper. Her broken-hearted family calling this her 4th internship working with animals, saying she was a beautiful young woman who had just started her career. She died pursuing her passion.
I can't imagine the loss they're enduring. I can't imagine what it must feel like to be them. We only knew this person a short time, and obviously it was already devastating for us.
The 10-acre refuge is home to more than 80 animals, including more than a dozen African lions. many rescued from poor conditions. Workers typically interact with the big cats daily through feedings and maintaining their habitats.
We're all still processing. This is not a situation we've ever had before. Any sort of incident like this is devastating to everyone, and we need to understand it.
The Conservative Center said it is cooperating with the investigation, but that it has never had anything like this happen here. Meanwhile, Alex Black's family is asking for donations in her honor to another animal refuge, Wolf Park in Battleground, Indiana. Michelle?
Tragic. Janet, thank you.
Stories of the Bible. Daniel in the Lion's Den. This is Daniel.
Oh, hey!
Who was a Jewish man who was taken to Babylon when he was very young.
Yeah.
Daniel loved God and followed God's rules. He talked to God 3 times a day and asked God for help often. Daniel served in the Babylonian king's court for many years.
Yeah, I know him.
And under many kings.
Hey, Daniel.
Daniel always proved himself to be more capable than all the other court officials.
Thanks. Well, anytime.
Daniel was serving under King Darius, and because of his great abilities, the king made plans to place him in charge of the entire empire.
Wow, okay.
The other court officials searched for some fault in Daniel, but they couldn't find anything wrong with him. He was faithful, responsible, and completely trustworthy.
Wait!
The court officials realized the only way to get at Daniel would be to challenge his faith.
Come on!
So they went to King Darius
Excuse me, Your Majesty.
and advised him to make a law that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone except King Darius will be thrown into the lion's den.
I like it.
King Darius signed this law, and once a Babylonian king signed a law, it could not be overruled. When Daniel learned of this law, he went home and knelt down, as he always did, to pray in his room with the windows open towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he always had done, giving thanks to God and asking for his help. The officials went to Daniel's house and found him praying.
Gotcha!
They went to the king and reminded him of the law.
I remember. Well...
Then they said that Daniel had been found praying to God 3 times a day.
What?
When the king heard this, he was very upset.
Get over here.
And he spent the whole day trying to think of a way to save Daniel.
Wait, what?
By that evening, the court officials came back to the king and reminded him that no law signed by the Babylonian king could be overruled. So at last, the king gave orders for Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den. The king said to him, "May your God, who you serve faithfully, rescue you." Then the lion's den was sealed shut with Daniel inside. The king spent the night fasting and couldn't sleep. Then very early in the morning, the king hurried to the lion's den. He called out,
"Hey, Daniel!
Was your God able to rescue you from the lions?" And Daniel answered, "Long live the king! My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight." The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be taken out of the lion's den. Then the king ordered the men who had schemed against Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den as punishment. Daniel was safe. There was not a scratch on him, for he trusted in God.
New York City Council voted unanimously last week to honor 2 of New York's most revered hip-hop acts by renaming streets after them. Brooklyn's finest, the late Notorious B.I.G., and the Staten Island crew that formed like Voltron, the Wu-Tang Clan, will each have a street named after them in their respective home boroughs. The same Brooklyn block that the Notorious B.I.G. grew up on will be renamed Christopher Wallace Way after his real name. Meanwhile, the 9-man group straight from the slums of Shaolin will have part of an intersection and a street in Staten Island renamed appropriately as the Wu-Tang Clan District. Despite the council's overwhelming support, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio will still need to approve the name changes before they become official. This isn't the first time New York has shown love to some of its most renowned hip-hop acts by renaming streets after them. In 2009, a street in Queens was renamed after the pioneering hip-hop trio Run DMC. And in 2016, another street in Queens was co-named after the 5-foot assassin of A Tribe Called Quest, the late Malik Phife Dawg Taylor.
And a new study from Villanova University shows that a growing number of adolescents and college students are engaging in some unusual behavior that may sometimes prove to be detrimental. They're sleep texting. Some are sleep emailing, sleep shopping, and even displaying bizarre social media posts, all while they're asleep. Much of this made possible by our unanimous and universal unhealthy attachment to our smartphones. Joining me now to sort this all out, my friend Lionel of Lionel Media. Lionel, my friend, okay, so it's the holidays. You got food, family, friends, shopping, but apparently for many, much of that is done all in their sleep. So in the days of yore, you know, like 20 years ago, we know people sleepwalk, sleep talk, even binge eat in their sleep. Now add smartphones to this scenario. As you often say, what can go wrong?
Are you buying this story? Seriously, you buy, and what, a yore is 20 years? What are you talking about? Look, you know, Manila, I've been a licensed lawyer for 35 years, and I've been trying to explain the insanity defense to people. And they say, I don't want to hear about that. No, but maybe somebody snapped because, no, they're guilty. Okay, all of a sudden somebody says, no, honey, I wasn't calling or sexting or texting that old girlfriend, or I wasn't buying all this. No, I was sleeping. Yeah, that's it. And people are buying this. This is the part that is the story. It's not that it's happening, but people are saying, yep, there you go. I'm starting to believe, Manila, that this whole thing is a sleep procedure. That this is, no, I'm serious. We are living in a world of parallel universe. And the best part about this, when I'm reading these stories, you ready for this? Somebody says, you know how to prevent this? Keep the phone out of your bed. How about keeping this radiation device away from your head? Because you're going to grow a cauliflower-like glioblastoma. But I digress.
That is a good point. People forget that these things do emit some radiation from them. But the doctors do say that this is a modern day broadening of what they call parasomnia issues. Docs say, like you said, the solution is just sleep away from your phone. Keep your phone away from the bed.
Right.
But I mean, is this easier said than done? People are truly addicted, Lionel.
Listen, I think it's as wonderful. The bottom line is, I'm telling you, this goes to show you the level of demented parallel universes that we're living in. That a couple of years ago, believe me when I'm telling you this, there are people who, if I had said before, and I'm going to say it again, if I had suggested that maybe you should be excused from certain forms of criminality because of the McNaughton rule about, they would say this is ridiculous. But now, not only, Manila, does this affect our ability to process things. Look at these people walking around staring at the ground. But anything is believable with this. Anything. I'm gaining weight because of the phone. I'm eating enough because of the phone. I'm getting a divorce because of the phone. And without anybody says, wait a minute, what about personal responsibility, as in the cases of people who have not been allowed to excuse criminal behavior. But this is the magic bullet. People say, oh, well, you know, that's right, it is. We believe. This is also contaminated our common sense.
Yes. Is there something hypnotic, perhaps, in our phones? I mean, I got to tell you, I don't know if I should be responsible for the safety of, let's say if you have your nose in the phone and you're crossing a parking garage driveway, and I'm pulling out of it, and you have your nose in the phone, you're crossing a driveway. Cars are coming in and out. Whose responsibility is it to keep the pedestrian safe? The pedestrian or the driver? They're in their phones.
That's the least of our problem. You know what it's done worse than that? It's turned people into, forget the texting, narcissism. Have you heard selfie arm?
Yes.
I'm not kidding you. You've heard of Netflix neck from people binge watching? I'm serious now. But selfie arm. Manila, I know people who, relatives, you know, Aunt Josephine, who a couple of years ago were normal, now is. And this, I mean, this, all of a sudden it's like, Aunt Josephine, you're not a model. Put this down. And not only that, Aunt Josephine can put on a filter. We don't even recognize her. This is the most dangerous
It's the Wayback
thing.
Machine. It takes Aunt Josephine back 30 years. Now, before I let you go, let's talk real quickly about shopping. When it comes to sleep shopping, people, I mean, celebrities like Carrie Underwood have tweeted about this. Do you think Amazon or credit card companies are going to come up with disclaimers that say sleep shopping is a valid transaction and therefore they won't refund you?
The law has already done that. Do you ever see any drunken shopping disclaimers? No. But I'm telling you, what this is you are opening up a brand new, mark my words, Manila, mark my words, you're going to see one day in courtrooms, you're going to see that insanity defense, which again, people rejected for years ago, but somebody's going to say, the reason why I did this was, well, the reason why I killed the family of 5 is because I was so into my game or Angry Birds or this or whatever it is, or I was through some kind of weird parasomnia, somnambulistic, I can exculpate my behavior.
All right.
And the best part about it is that people will agree to it.
All right, Lionel, my friend. Unfortunately, we got to leave it right there. Thank you, as always. Fun chat for a Friday.
No, thank you.
Everyone has questions. Children have questions, adults, the elderly, everyone has questions.
They're seeking, they're skeptical, they're critical.
Questions about life, about God, about why we exist.
What does it take for salvation?
Death and grief.
Is Jesus the Son of God?
Things that happen in the world, difficult things.
There's millions of people looking for these answers. Where are they going? They're going online.